I'm so excited that we've got her here to talk to. I've been following her work for a long time, and seeing her fine artwork with the dogs is just incredible. And for those people that are here, I'm sure you're big fans of her work, or else you wouldn't be here to see and have a chat with her and learn all about her exquisite photography. So just saying that, let's put you over to Caroline so she can introduce herself, and let's just get a little bit of history about you.
Well, hello everybody. It's a little bit strange being here, really. I was surprised that so many people arrived. So I'm Caroline, and I'm working line images, and I'm a dog photographer and a country life photographer, based up in Yorkshire now. I've got these pictures here. Do you want me just to sort of bring them up and share my screen so you can see them, or do you want me to have a chat first?
I think, yeah, just let's get a bit of history about yourself, sort of where you've come from.
Where I come from.
Yeah.
I love this, Derek the Dell. Yes, that's very good. I need one of these signs here. I don't know if everyone can see that. So originally I'm from down south, and spent lots of time sort of growing up in and around sort of St Albans area. Latterly then moved to Dorset and spent lots of time in Dorset, living on the south coast there. And it wasn't until sort of the later stages of living in Dorset that I picked up a camera in anger, really. My mum was a hobby photographer, and one of those mums that pointed a camera at you and permanently said, "Will you smile for the camera, please?" And by the time we were sort of 15, we all turned the other way and said, "No, we're not doing this anymore." So it wasn't until I was sort of mid-20s that I actually picked up an SLR and had a go at it, and went and stuck it in flowers and in bushes and took pictures of waves breaking, and eventually bought one of the very first Minolta digital cameras, and it was absolutely fabulous. I mean, it was a complete eye-opener, and sadly that got stolen, believe it or not, while I was at work, and that made the move back to Canon. So I suppose we're about 2012 now, and I've got a Canon 400D, and I've got a 17-55 and a just bog standard 70-300 stuck on the end of it. And I got a Labrador, Bob, and Bob's the reason that I am here doing what I do today. He really is the reason for everything. So Bob arrived in 2011, and I was living down in Dorset, and I took him to gun dog training, and it was as simple as that. We turned up at a Spaniel day for our first Labrador training day, and it kind of went in that vein forever, really. We had a great session, and when we weren't there training, my instructor, my training lady Tracy, was fantastic and let me go and sit in the corner quietly with a camera. So I spent many a Saturday and a Sunday laying face down in the mud, watching the dogs running and thinking, this is great, this is lovely, and not really doing anything with the pictures, just coming home and spending hours like we do, sat in front of the screen editing. And one day somebody says to me, "Oh, any chance we can have a look at those pictures that you're taking?" So I thought, oh, okay, fine. And I think initially I put them on a Smug Mug website. So this is back, which I've still got. So this Smug Mug website still holds my entire back catalogue and current catalogue. So that's been running since 2012. I have another site that attaches to it, but the Smug Mug holds everything. And people started paying me for my pictures, which was a bit of a shock horror. They want pictures of their dogs, fine. So I ended up taking more pictures than I did training the dog. And then in 2013, I made a sudden and unexpected move from Dorset to Yorkshire. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Yorkshire. I'd never been to Yorkshire before, but I tilted up just outside Holmfirth in 2013, and it got to a point where the photography had to turn from being a complete hobby into putting food on the table, which becomes quite a scary prospect, really. Because I've now moved away from all the people that I knew, all the people that were supporting my work, all the people that were loving the images, to somewhere where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any gun dog trainers. I didn't know anybody really at all. Didn't even really know where Tesco's and Co-op were. You know, it was one of those moments where you think, oh no. But we persevered, and Bob and I settled in, and we found a local gun dog trainer in Doncaster, Darren, and we tilted up with our camera, and there started a relationship that is still going. I will still go and lay in a muddy field with 6 or 7 trainee gun dogs and still enjoy it just as much as I did the very first day that I did it. And from that gun dog training class came a whole wealth of friends and customers and repeat customers. And at the same time that this was going on, I met a chap, as you do, and he became an integral part of Working Line, and he introduced me to the grouse moors that we live on the edge of. And so my relationship with the grouse moors and the pheasant shooting round in this part of the country took off. And I spent some amazing times out on the moors, again, working, really looking to photograph the dogs. And it was Andrew's dogs that I was photographing to begin with. And it's a very formidable place to be, you know. It's a very much a shoot and drop sort of, or drop and shoot style photography. You see it coming, you've got to flatten down, you've got to think about what you're doing, and you've got to grab the shot. And it really does test your, I suppose, your mental ability to see the shot and know that your settings are right. So that was really, really good practice. And all this time I just said, no, I'm a natural light photographer. That's all I do. And that's where I'm going to stay, just natural light. And then in March 2000, and I think it was 14, I moved into the cottage, and the cottage came with the most incredible stone hayloft, my old barn. And there began a real love affair, and a love-hate affair, I have to say, because when it rained and it got very wet, it was an awful place to work. But it's that stone floor, which Sally's mentioned many times to me. How can you have that stone floor? Well, I did have a stone floor. And for a while, it's what made my images stand out, or not stand out, but stand apart from those people that were doing the more studio-based stuff, that were having wooden floors or dropping floors in or having full backdrops. I had this stone floor that was, you know, it was there, and it was very cold and it was very damp and it was very hard to kneel on and to shoot, but there was the barn. And when I first started with the barn, I'll flick some pictures up if I can, because it'll give you an idea of the sort of the timeline. Because in my journey over the last, I suppose, since 2012, so nearly 10 years, there have been some absolutely fundamental key turning points. And doing this for tonight was really interesting to look back and see where my journey had come and what those key points were. And they were really easy to see when you actually put it in a chronological order. It's really interesting to do. And I think that one of the things that I've really loved about it is that I still have those images from 2012. I still have all those original images of Bob flying out of a lake with a dummy in his mouth. It's completely out of focus. Now, when we all do training now, we say to people, you know, be really strict and rigid about your culling. Well, that's really one thing that I am still trying to get the hang of. I hate deleting anything. But I have to get used to doing it a little bit more. You just never know when you're going to need a shot, you know. So I'm going to, if I can, if Sally's allowed me to share my screen, that's lovely. Yeah. I will drop this down and hopefully you'll be able to see Bob. So there we go. Bob being the reason for, whoa, let's just get hold of the mouse here for a minute. Bob being the reason for everything. I'll not do it on a full screen because else I can't see you all. And then if you want to wave at me for any reason, you won't be able to. So this is Bob, young Labrador. This particular shot was shot, believe it or not, under a tree in the back garden. And it was the first real portrait shot that I'd ever taken. And it was more of a fluke than it was anything else. I'll be completely honest, you know. It was with my 400D, And it was a shot that captured me because he was so young, and it's a shot that stuck with me. And even now, I bet you can see the terrible editing around the back of him, because there's still bits of green that's showing through. He's got lovely magenta tint to his ears.
Still see your style here. You know, I can see your style in this shot.
I suppose you start somewhere, don't you? You have to start somewhere. And the interesting thing, so this was Bob before I lost him last year. So you can see where it comes from. And it's still the same shot. It's just inside and a little bit more polished. But you do stay true to yourself. And I suppose I'd gone off and I was doing lots of stuff out on the moors. I was doing lots of gun dog training days. I was creating my funnels, for want of a better word. You know, I was meeting all these people. And eventually these people started saying, well, you couldn't just stay behind after Gun Dog Club and take a picture of my dog, could you? Yeah, of course I can. Absolutely fine, no problem. And so that kind of started building a small network of clients, which was great. And then when was it? November 2015. So I'd done this for a couple of years and wasn't really, and you know, I'm the natural light photographer, I'm the gun dog photographer, that's what I do, I only do that. And then November 2015, a really good friend up the road asked me to take a picture of her black Labrador. I'm really embarrassed to show this, but this is why it was so good. Asked me to take a picture of her black Labrador for her husband's Christmas present. And I thought, oh no, I can't do it outside because it's like really horrible and rainy. What am I going to do? So I stuck her in the barn. Never used my barn before. And this was Meg. And I was over the moon and I was delighted and I was just overjoyed that I'd managed to get this shot. And she had this shot and she had it on a canvas and everybody was really, really happy. And that particular shot became a shot that even till last year, when we were still able to shoot, people would say to me, it didn't matter what else they wanted in the gallery, but they would say, I want that shot. And that shot has become the shot that I always make sure we get. And it doesn't matter whether they're coming for a half and half, a portrait session and an outdoor session. You know, I always make sure that I know what they've got in their minds, and even if they're not people that I know, if they walk into the studio, I have a very similar picture to this hanging on the wall, and they'll all go, one of those. So, you know, as Sally said, people start to recognize you for a style. So I carried on shooting in the barn, and by this time I'd joined as a member of the guild, and I'd started entering things into the guild, and things were pulling at bronzes, and I was kind of trundling along thinking, oh, yeah, this is right. But all the time, I'm a natural light photographer. That's what I do. That's what I am. I'm not I'm not going into the studio. We just use the barn doors. Then January 2017 came the first really major turning point for me. A good customer, a repeat customer, and who has become a good friend, sent me an email asking me if I would produce an old master's style image of his Clumber Spaniel for their annual magazine. And he sent me probably a 3,000 word draft on how he expected this image to look.
Oh my God.
At which point Andrew said to me, are you sure? And it was one of those cases of, I really have taken a big chunk here and I've really got to chew it down. So I did a lot of research. And at this particular point, I wasn't using off-camera flash, but it was January and there was no chance of getting any real proper natural light into the barn at that time of year. So I bought a young new a young new 600, not even a Canon one. And I said to Andrew, you're gonna have to hold it. So we had a bare flash and a white dog in a black barn.
Oh my God.
And the resulting image was this.
Wow.
And yeah, and it absolutely captured everything that he wanted. And it led to a commission of all of their dogs that they actually ended up having printed on beautiful canvases and framed, and they are stunning. But it was the first time that I thought, I need to have a bit of light here.
Yeah.
So having really enjoyed that, having really enjoyed the challenge, having got the image, having been happy with it, and having the client have more images on the back of it, I started to do a few more shoots inside. So I then met Jasmine, and these are really early on. You can see that the light is tiny, that there's no softbox on that light. You can see by the pinprick of the, you know, the catch lights in the eyes, the position of the catch lights isn't quite right. The texture's very heavy on the overlay. But again, the client still loved it. And for me, this was another important client. We did pictures of Jasmine. It was a memory shoot that we did over the course of 6 months, together with her other Goldies in the family, and at the end we made a memory book that became very special. And that's one of the key driving factors of why I do what I do, because it is so important to have pictures of our dogs and all of our animals, because they're integral parts of our family and of our life. And I don't have kids, but people spend fortunes having pictures of their babies on the wall, and as they grow up you have more pictures on the wall, and then it's wedding pictures, and it's grandchildren, and for me, dogs are part of my life in the same way. And so I can't tell you the amount of times that people have bumped into people and they said, you know, we were meaning to book a shoot and now it's too late. And I always say, just don't make it be too late. You know, it's so important. They are such a big part of their life. And Jasmine, I wrote a blog piece about Jasmine and about Jasmine's story, which is on the website. And it was a real special time. So I carried on in the same vein, really. By this time, I hadn't had any training. I was all self-taught. I was using a 7D Mark I. I had two 7D Mark Is and a 70 to 200 2.8 plonked on the end of it. And my next shoot came along, and this was, in terms of a business, probably one of the keystone points of the business. And this was Gus and Charlie. Now, Gus and Charlie, I knew Gus and Charlie, but it still took me 45 minutes to get them out of the car and into the barn. And when we walked into the barn, this was the first shot off the camera. The next 3.5 hours were like pulling our teeth out. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to have their picture taken. One was freaking out while the other one was freaking out. It was a really hard, but we got there. We absolutely got there, and we came away with a set of shots that to this day I'm over the moon with. This one, yes, one of my first silvers with the Guild, and this one a gold with the MPA. And at that particular point, I thought, do you know what? I can kind of do this. I might do this a bit more. I might push this on a little bit.
Don't you find though? Like with me, it took me a few years to actually start seeing the light properly. Like you think, oh, even like with daylight, like natural light, it's really helped me using the strobes and studio lights, because you see it so much more, don't you? But it does take a while for everything to click, doesn't it?
Well, it'll shock you to say that if I tell you that up until last year, I was still using my 2 original Yongnu's in 2 square softboxes. And I still don't have a plug-in strobe. I still just use 2 AD200s.
But light is light. Light is light. And it doesn't matter what you use. It's just, you know, it's just getting the light, isn't it?
And I think people think, oh no, I can't do studio stuff. I can't do this. I can't do that. And you can do it in your garage with a single flash and a softbox and a backdrop. And if you've got the understanding, it's there to be enjoyed. And people come to me and say, you know, they'll come for a lesson and they'll say, oh, no, we're going to do all the outdoor stuff. And I'll say, right, well, we're just going to do 1 shot here and then we're going to go outside. And then they say, well, could we do some more shots here? Because actually, I've never taken anything that's looked like that ever, because it's a completely different feel. But that doesn't take away from being able to capture shots like this one. And still being able to, I think sometimes taking these outdoor shots is a lot harder mentally than it is being in a studio. In a studio, yes, you have to think about it. You have to think about what your flash is doing. You have to think about where your light's coming from, where your shadows are, how you want to light your shadows. But when you're outside, you don't have that time. You are looking at those dogs. Those dogs aren't going to sit there and stay there all afternoon for me. I had a small window of opportunity to catch that shot. And again, you know, later on when we look at some of the shots of the dogs coming in, if they're out retrieving, if we want to look at some of those, it's one of those things you can turn around, you can spin right round. And the next thing you know, you've got a dog coming flying towards you at what, 15, 20 miles an hour with a bird in its mouth. And you've got 1 minute just to drop down and take that shot as it's coming past you. You don't get a rerun.
No, so when you're outdoors, how are you setting up your camera for these shots? Because obviously, like when I work with the dogs outside, it is exactly that. So I tend to sort of set my camera on like a set aperture and stuff. What's your aperture that you like to work at outside for these shots?
If I had to choose and I had a perfect day and I didn't have to worry about light, I'd want a 1600 shutter speed, probably a 6.3 aperture and an ISO at 400, wouldn't we always? Yeah. But that never ever happens. It so very rarely ever happens. And it's more like 2.8 ISO 3200 at 1,000th of a second. And I'm thinking, if I hold my breath and sit here long enough, the dog's going to slow down a stop. And you have to, you know, one of the big things when you're doing anything that's moving, I think horses as much, but maybe not quite so much as dogs, because horses are that a bit slower in their gait. They're that little bit more predictable in their movement, and they're not generally running across a moor hither and thither. But I think you have to know your kit. You have to absolutely know what your camera's capabilities are. You have to know what ISO you can shoot comfortably, and when you get the images home, you're going to be happy with them, that they're still going to be, there's not going to be too much noise there that's detracting from the image. You have to know how slow you can hold that camera and get sharp images. You know, my 7D Mark 1, I could handhold that at 1/60th of a second in my barn without any trouble whatsoever, and they'd be pin sharp. My 7D Mark 2, I can't do anything below 1/250th of a second. You know, I'm getting old. I don't hold a camera as steady as I did, but the cameras are different, and each generation of camera, it seems to be more and more light sensitive and more sensitive to what we're doing. So you have to know your camera limitations. You have to know what meter setting you want to be using. You know, I like to use, depends, if I'm a Canon girl, so if I'm out and about and the light isn't great, I tend to use center weighted average. If the light's really good and I can get that 6.3 and I've got lots of light, evaluative metering all the way for me. But I work in manual, and I very, very rarely will switch it to shutter priority, and it'll only be shutter priority if I'm out on a big payday and the weather conditions are shocking and I haven't got time to be doing everything. But my first preference would always be to shoot in manual. So once I took the Gus and Charlie pictures, and clients said to me, can we come to your house and see the pictures? I thought, oh, IPS. Oh, deep breath. Really? Okay, we can do this. So first of all, it was just going to be Sally coming, and then she pinged and said, can we make it 7 o'clock because David wants to come as well? So I thought, I'd never done this. I'd never done IPS. I'd never been with a client when they'd seen the images. I'd always done online galleries. And there they were, sitting in front of my Mac in my sitting room, waiting to see this slideshow. And so I pressed the go button, and I had, I think it was Coldplay, or an instrumental of one of Coldplay's. And they looked at each other and went, oh, it's our wedding music.
Oh, that's
fab. And I thought, yes. And I have to say, I stood on their shoulder, and at every shot, they went, oh, to each other, or, oh, or, oh, and then we got to the end, and I didn't know whether to breathe. I didn't know whether to be sick. I didn't know what to say to them. And David looked at me and said, well, here's the thing. We've brought some frames with us that are in the car. And I said, okay, do you want to get them? And he said, no, it would be an insult. This is not what I was expecting to see. And £1,200 worth of sale later, I'd nailed my first IPS.
Wow.
And the thing to know if you are in this genre is people in newborn photography, customers spend a fortune. Not every customer that's buying your dog work is going to spend that, but there are people that do. And you have to find your client. You have to work out who your client is. But what that did for me was to enable me to see people viewing their images and my work for the first time. And that was a huge eye-opener. It also taught me that my favorite images aren't always the client's favorite images, and that has to be one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learned. So so we carried on. I'll flick on a bit because I'm conscious that there's a few. So we carried on taking shots in the barn, playing with our single flash with no softbox on. And then in December that year, it rained, and it did not stop raining, and there was no shooting outside. It was just foul. So I disappeared into my barn with Flossie, and I got a softbox. And I was gone probably about a week, and I didn't come out until I'd got it right. Now I've got two lights there. There's a rim light on the left-hand side there. I've never really nailed my rim light, but she's got a rim light on the left-hand side, and she's got a single light coming straight at her. And this, for me, was the point where I thought, right, I've got to use this barn. I can't shoot outside. I need to use the barn properly. So I did, and off I went. And this was the first one of those bag shots I took in the barn. Millie, this one here, was one of the very first client shoots on that step. Gosh, look at the editing. I should be doing that now. And this is Fred. And this was Fred taken last year. And this shows you how it's developed.
Wow.
Okay, so you can see the journey of the shot, and I still have the same shots, the same black on black headshot, the same shot. You know, people say to me, or when we're talking to photographers in general, and you say, I get ever so bored of shooting the same thing. But that's why people see you. That's why people come to you. That's why people want you to take their pictures, because they want what they've seen. So for my side of it, I have to go off and hide in the depths of the barn or the depths of the studio and create other things for me, but maintaining an equal standard of what has gone before, because everybody still wants those sort of things. So off we went. And then in May of 2018, I bumped into a lady called Pandora. I don't know if any of you know Pandora, but she is the Yorkshire lady for Going Digital. And she approached me to run some gun dog workshops for her. And I'd run one or two workshops, and I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. And I shall skim past this really quickly, but we have a riot. Okay, we all go up on the moor, we lay in the grass, and we take pictures of dogs, and we have a wonderful, wonderful time. And there's the barn. That's the barn with Flossie on her bale and that stone floor. So from there, the gun dog stuff was still going on. I was still up on the moors out shooting, and I was still doing the gun dog training days on a Saturday and Sunday, although not nearly as many. And then the chap that was doing the gun dog days said to me, oh, we're doing a competition. Do you want to come and take the photographs? And I said, well, no, not particularly. But what I will do is I will take a tent. So I took a tent. I've never done this either, getting brave now. So I took a tent. Obviously, that's me waving around with an audience whilst you've got a spaniel on a bale of straw in a tent. So that was quite interesting. I ended up shooting 35 dogs over the course of 2 days in my tent on my own. Big lesson learned. If you're going to do that, take a friend. So this was the kind of shot that was coming out of that setup. I've got my green backdrop, which is my green backdrop, which I've always used since I started doing studio stuff. It's it kind of sits with my work and people know that as my backdrop, if you like. But I'd chunk the end off it, I cut the end off it, hung it up in the back. You can see I've got a single light, that's all I've got. With AD 200 hanging out the back of it, and away we went. From the back of this, I got asked if I wanted to do another one. And I should have said no, but I said yes. And so I went off with a friend to a shed in November in Leeds, and I shot another 30 dogs over the course of 2 days on a bale with a single light, and off we went. And the sorts of shots that we were getting from here were these. And then halfway through the second day, this walked in. At which point I thought, oh, really? Oh dear. And the lady that was running the day for me said, or who I was doing it for, came in and she said, oh, the lady after this she can't get here, so you've got an extra half an hour. At which point I kind of got a little bit excited, because there were 2 of these English pointers. They were sisters and they were old. And this lovely, lovely lady, she was just saying, look, I've bought their winter coats. We could have Christmas cards. Really, really lots of deep breathing going on by this time. I'll just point in that by this time I was using a 5D Mark III with a 70-200 on the end. Only thing that's changed is the body, but I've gone full frame. And I love my 5D Mark III. And I said to her, you're gonna have to take that jumper off. It's just not happening. It's just not doing it for me. So we took the jumper off and we got the 2 girls together on their leads in this setup.
I know this image. This image is amazing.
And I took the shots and I was exhausted by the end of the day. I went home and I didn't even look at them. And 2 days later, I had a look through, and the image that ended up coming from this dog and her sister is this image.
Yeah, wow.
And this image was a turning point for me. So this is another really big turning point, because I hadn't edited anything really to that fine art style. I hadn't really, all of mine up to that point, you can even see with the one that was taken, you know, they're still very much a photograph as opposed to giving it that fine art style.
Yeah.
So I edited this through and I sat and looked at it. And I'll be honest with you, I put it in one place and it got a nothing, and I put it in somewhere else and it got a gold. And I kind of thought, oh, well, do you know what? Hey ho, such is life. But it absolutely made me re-look at my studio work and my use of flash. And then I took my flash outside and found that if you took your flash outside, even though the light isn't quite right in her eyes, you get this amazing feeling coming back, this beautiful, you know, this soft control of the light. So having taken the picture of the Pointer Sisters, as they're fondly known, and they are hanging in my sitting room, a huge one hanging in the sitting room.
Such an amazing image. And you can really see the soft light coming in there in your work. It is incredible. And, you know, this is what I mean, I love fine art anyway. It's my go-to kind of light, soft light. And this is absolutely breathtaking. It really is.
So that then started the journey. That started the journey to more of a creative sort of fine art finish. Now, I apologize if anybody doesn't want to see things, but you know what I do. So some of my pictures are going to have birds and things in them. So the next important image was this image. And this image nearly broke me as a photographer and nearly broke me as an editor, I have to say. And I took this image apart 3 or 4 times. Now, I don't know if you can see, but behind Wilf, there's a shot of a wood in the picture. So that's mine as well. So I've shot the woodland as well. I've dropped that into the frame. And it was, he is standing in the frame. I'm terribly literal. People say to me, how did you manipulate him in Photoshop? I said, no. He's standing in the frame. That's our shot. You know, the only thing that's dropped him behind is the background. And I am very literal in what I shoot. I kind of set it up, even if I've got bits of old rope holding things up. I rather have it sat there and real. So this image again, kind of, if you had to say to me what are your favorite two images, they would be the pointer image and this image of wealth. This now is taken on a 5D Mark IV. I went up again. I still use my 5D Mark III outside. It's a lot better outside than the 5D Mark IV, but my 5D Mark IV in the studio is sublime. And with a 70-200, it's what I use. I have a Folly. I have a 135mm f2, but it's too big for the studio. And I just love it outside, but I don't get to use it in the studio very often. So then we kept going, and we have to put this in because this is Cocker Rhapsody. And this one came towards the back end of last year, and they were actually all shot separately. And I was doing some lighting tests. So the light's actually different in all their eyes. But no one seems to mind, so we don't worry about that. And then we moved, or we started to think about moving. And the very last shot I took in the barn before we moved was Dottie. So this is the last time I shot the chair in the barn on the stone floor with the window behind. And that was the goodbye to the barn. And I put that in, and it won me my gold. And then we moved here. Oh, am I still with you? Because my connection's unstable. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're still here.
So we moved. So we packed up. We moved a mile down the road to a ranch.
Wow.
Amazingly different to, in fact, if you look up here, that's where I was. So I've just come down the valley, but it's a very, very different feel. This is the studio. So we have a completely new studio. We still have barn doors. We still have barns, and behind where I'm standing, I actually have a cattle byre that's got all the calves in it at the moment. So it's very, very rural. And I opened my doors to my clients and said, come along. I've now got, this actually is quite big. I managed to have 2 12-foot drops permanently hung on the walls. So I have the green drop that you see in most of my pictures, and then I have another grey drop sat by the side of it, but they're permanently up, and I still have space to shoot around that as well. So I'm really lucky. I don't for one moment ever think I'm not lucky to live where I am or to have the opportunity that I've got now. And so the poodles came.
Yes.
And I said there were 3 of them. And they walked in and had a poo on my floor. And I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those days.
Yeah, I've had that too.
And they were completely out of control. They were divine, I have to say, but they were, rambunctious would be a good word. But this is magic, and this is grandma magic. So I had 3 generations, Magic, Marvel and Minnie, and this was magic. And I said at the very end, do you reckon she'll sit in that chair for me? Well, didn't she just? Complete and utter poser extraordinaire. Look at me, aren't I just?
So gorgeous.
So this brought us really, because we moved, I opened the studio here in August, and then we got locked down again. So I've only had a couple of shoots in. We've only managed to get a couple of shoots in between lockdown and things. So this brought us to the end of the year, and it brought me to a position that I'm up for one of the top 10 finalists in the Portrait with the Guild this year, Portrait with the Guild, and we'll see on Saturday how we do. But hey ho. But that means that we have a new chapter. And a lot of people said to me, well, what are you going to do? Because, you know, your barn door's gone. I can see Sally thinking there's no stone floor. She's got rid of her stone floor. Where's the stone floor? But never fear. We also bring the stone floor with us, because we have it now as a photo. We've got it as a digital backdrop. So shoot on the grey and you can actually create it. But I have a very different feel. And Andrew was really worried. He said to me, but this is, you know, the barn is what everybody knows you for. People calm, it's why they come for their pictures. And I said, yes, but everything evolves, everything moves forward, and you have to keep challenging yourself, and you have to step out of your comfort zone sometimes. And we moved in and I went, oh no, I've done it again, haven't I? Nothing like a bit of pressure. Best get shooting, best get practicing. So where we are up to date, current images and the style of image that will come out from the ranch are this. So this is Dottie, and this is the fireplace in the ranch, in the studio. I have a wooden floor. I can pull my lights in and I can create a real ranchy feel. And we've done this a couple of times, a couple of shoots that I had just before Christmas. We managed to have the log fire burning, and we've got Labradors curled up in front of the log burner on cushions. And it's just a lovely, lovely natural setup.
Oh my gosh.
But are people still going to say to me, what about the barn? So we have a barn. So our props will slightly change to our wagon. He's actually called Solly. I don't know why we've got a one of those. There we go. So you can see that we're changing to tack and to buckets, to water buckets and to wagon wheels, small wagon wheels, although it's a small one. But you can see we still have the same barn. We still have that same feel. We have a stone floor, not the same flags, but we have a stone floor, and we have the barn backdrops. And so the images are still there. They're evolving, but there's still the same feel to the images that there always has been. So there is a continuity, even though there is a change. And hopefully the clients that have been for hayloft sessions are now going to come for ranch sessions, because they all need new pictures of their dogs in the new settings, which is the general idea. So that kind of brings us up into where we are. And then over Christmas, this happened. And I thought of Sally when I took this, I have to say. I actually dived out of the car and said, stop, I need to take your picture. And he said, okay, that's fine. And believe it or not, he's called Tom and the horse is called Custer. And how perfect was it? So it's not a shot for anything. It was pouring with rain, but it's a feel of where I'm going outside with the bits and pieces that I've got locally. So it's an interesting journey and quite exciting to sort of see it all coming together. Now, it's up to you guys. If you look further on, I've got some of the outdoor shots, sort of some of the retrieving shots. If you want to have a look through those and talk about the shoot day stuff, I'm open to whatever.
Yes,
Keep going.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Keep going.
Yeah,
Right, whilst we keep going, this one here was one of my first proper studio portrait shots in the barn. Okay, this is Woody, and then 2 years later Woody came back. She got me a silver both times, but isn't it just gorgeous? Look. So that's a really nice, I thought it was quite nice to sort of show befores and afters and continuity. Another one with the sort of Sally Stone floor is Seamus, just on a straight grey backdrop. And then we go outside, and these are what make my heart sing. They're what make me smile. They're what I'll put my waterproofs on and go and lay in the gloom and the doom to get shots, these sorts of shots. It's what they're bred to do. It's what they are out there doing. This is Nora.
Oh gosh.
She's a bit special, is Nora. And then one day I was sat there and the fog came down. I think it was the first day of the season, and we'd walked, you don't want to know where we'd walked, up a hill like this, and we got to the top huffing and puffing and having what we call grouse lung because you can't breathe. And I'm sitting there as the fog, and they said, oh, they're going to call us off, we're going to have to go all the way back down the bottom of the hill again. And we could see the beaters coming in across the top of the moor, but only really, really faint outlines, really faint. And then Andrew said, what's that? And I lifted the camera, and out of nowhere came Xena.
Oh my gosh, look at that.
And she came, you can see the fog. She came through the fog, and I went, whoa. And she went, whoa, who are you? And we had that second of standoff. And Andrew's done this once to me before. We were sitting on a hill, and this big hare came running down this path between amazing bits of heather. It was perfect. It was coming straight towards me. Its feet were, it was going so fast that its back legs were in front of its face. It was giving it so much. And Andrew's saying to me, have you got it? Have you got it? Have you got it? Have you got the shot? And as the hare went past, I turned and went, no, I haven't. So occasionally when he sat there going, have you got it? Have you got it? I'm thinking, have I got it? Have I got it? And yes, I got it. And it got a real mixed review because people say they hate the collar, but she was wearing the collar. And so I left the collar because it's part of who she is. But she was a proper sort, it was Xena. And then we have other shots, you know, we'll go out at the beginning of the season in August, September time when the heather's up, and you can come away with shots like that, which any owner is just gonna just love. So, and again, you know, that's a shot where you've got to think about what you're doing. It's not just set your camera on 6.3 and shoot all day long. I knew I wanted that soft background. I know what I've got to do to make that soft background happen. You know, you've got to still be thinking about what you're doing. It really isn't just a case of just lift the camera up and shoot. And looking for different images as well, looking for things that tell a story. So one of my favorite, I've got three favorites here. One of them is a young Weimaraner. It's actually the mother to the one in the barn. So it's a really, for me, it just shows she's not focused on me at all. She's absolutely focused on the job in hand, and she came straight across me, and the colors for me just work together beautifully. Then we have Wilfred. Wilf is one of my dogs. And that's Andrew's leg, and he has got to be. We always say that if Blackadder had done Springer Spaniels, they'd have Wilf involved, because actually when he's not there, he's got this big ruff and he looks at you down his nose like, yeah, who are you then? But he does take a nice picture for me. So sometimes I can get a dog to stand there, and I can ask Andrew to bring a leg in, and I can see a shot. And again, it's looking for the shot to see, you know, you're seeing the shot as you're creating it. This one was my first award for an outdoor shot for a working dog, which I was absolutely delighted with, because it's a hard thing, you know, it's very subjective. And he was a beautiful, beautiful dog, and he'd come a long way with that bird. And so I was quite lucky. In fact, to be fair to him, he'd come an awfully long way. By the time he got to me, he was knackered, and he was on the slow down to give it into the owner anyway. So I was kind of, you know, that's what you're looking for. You have to read the dog. You have to read where it's going to go, what its stride is. You know, there's nothing worse than, like this one, for instance. This one's lifting up. So there's nothing worse. That run, I'll have had 4 or 5 shots in that run, and one of them, the dog will have been down in its stride. It'll be disappearing in a heather. Its head will be down, its eyes will be closed. And the next shot after that is this shot where she's pulling through, she's pushing up, chest up, heads up, eyes are wide open because she's looking where she's going. So you have to read the movement of the dog. You know, there's no point in just taking it on a down shot and going, that's my shot. You know, I know people that will say, oh no, you only need to take 2 shots. Well, to get the best of a dog on a run, you need 4 or 5 shots, and you need them all to be as good, so you get the choice to decide which one is the right one. I wouldn't then put all of them in, but I will pick the favorite shot.
I do the same with the horses. I think because you always get the downward strikes with the horses, and you know you get 1 or 2 shots where they're just curling round the bend.
Oh, horses, let's not, okay, because I do shoot horses, but I have to have somebody that knows, because the horse's foot isn't up enough. Its ears wrong way round this way, it's right way round this way. I give up. All right, and they are very hard, and especially with a horse owner, because that owner will want to see a specific stride pattern. I'm absolutely well aware of that. People with their dogs, as long as the dog is up and pulling forward and bright-eyed and looking at the camera, they're really just chuffed to bits with it. But I understand that with horses, it's, you know, there's a lot of different, you can't have that because it's on a back foot or whatever it's doing. But so this particular dog, this is the same dog on the same day, completely different story.
Oh, look at that.
And so you're telling the story, you know, she stood there with the drives going on, she's watching what's going on, and afterwards she's off picking up her birds. She's a beautiful dog as well. It's lots of, I did notice I'd got lots of springers in here. And then, you know, you take the shots at the back of the trucks when everybody's had a cup of tea and everybody's milling about, and what happens is people open their crate doors now while I'm wandering around with a camera, and they go and pat their dog as if to say, yeah, mine needs a picture taken.
Yeah,
Can you come and do mine?
on shoots as well. Like when I go there in my camera, they all open the back of the cars. So I take
yeah. Hello, you haven't done mine yet.
Yeah, I get that.
And this again, this is she's a lovely old cocker, and she fast asleep. Well, she will wait there, but I'm laying on the deck of a grouse butt looking across her, and she just was not phased. She weren't interested in me at all. So but these tell the story of the day, and you need to be looking for stories. Every shoot day has a different story. It's not all about the dogs, but for me, you know, that's why I'm there to capture it. And this young lady is Kez. She's one of our black Labradors, and again, Andrew's legs there. And that one went down a storm, that picture. People loved that picture, but it's a connection between her and him. And although she is my dog, she has no time for me whatsoever. The only person that exists in her world is Andrew. And if we're out walking and I recall her, she goes and stands next to him. And you kind of think it's a bit rude, really, but they have a complete and utter love affair, and her safe place is there. That's what, if he's shooting, that's where she stands. He kind of releases her to go with a tap on the knee, and off she goes. But so that kind of brings us to today, or last week, actually, and the new chapter that is going to be the ranch. And yes, so I've prattled on and shown you some pictures, and I hope you've enjoyed it, really. If you've got questions, or then, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your workshops.
Okay, so the workshops, we do different workshops. We can do one-to-one workshops if somebody's got something specific they want to learn, and we can do one-to-one workshops for photography and or editing. So we can do group workshops if you've got a camera club that fancy coming, and there's 4 of you. We're saying 4 or 5 now. I think things are going to change permanently for a while. I think we're going to be having, but we never had very big groups. I think 6 was the most we ever used to have anyway, but 4 is a nice group. And everybody can be safe at the moment. So going forward, that's what we'll look at. But you can, if you've got 4 from a camera club that want to come, we can do a specific workshop for that. One-to-ones, one-to-one editing via Zoom, one-to-one camera courses via Zoom are going really well. People are loving the fact that they haven't got to get in their cars and go anywhere, that they can just do it online. And it's a very different way of teaching, but it is working. We also do themed days. So we'll have a heather day in August. We'll run a dog workshop that's based around the heather and the grouse moor. We'll do a gun dog themed day. We live very close to the reservoir down here, so we do a water themed day. And then we do a classic portraiture day where we do a bit of inside and outdoors, or indoors and outdoors. So some natural light and some studio stuff that is based around portraiture, dog portraiture. And again, what we tend to do is towards the end of the day, we sit down and I'll edit through some shots and let people see that they can take a really good shot that they've taken and turn that shot into an absolutely incredible shot. But, and I do always say this, you've got to be able to see the shot before you do it. Yes. You've got to take the shot and know where you're going with it. You've really got to be involved with it. We're also running for next year some great days for people that have a little bit more experience and know what they're doing with a camera. We are doing shoot and edit. So I'm gonna set up some gun dogs themed mornings. It'll be we'll do lots of different themes, but you're going to shoot, I'm going to set, you're going to shoot, and then in the afternoon you're going to edit with me on your shoulder. So rather than me telling you how to edit, you're all kind of fairly at a level where you know how to edit, but there'll be the times where you say, well, how do you do that? And rather than me standing at the blackboard going, this is how you do it, I'll show you how to do it, and then you can do it with your pictures on your laptop in your time, which is, they were being really popular and then everything got pulled. Idea was that we can run those through the winter because we can shoot in the morning with the light and edit in the afternoon when it's dark. So
well, I was really hoping we could get some of my group up to you to do some workshops. So I mean, we can sort some dates out for that, so we can get some of my groups up there that are interested in learning.
Absolutely, absolutely, that would be a lovely thing to do. It'd be lovely to have you here.
So this is your studio here.
This is the studio, yeah.
It's amazing.
Caroline.
So we can just unshare your picture there, then we can go into some questions. Sorry, Mike.
It's okay. That's a question I was going for. It's okay. I answered it, then I thought, actually, no, Caroline will probably work. Caroline, what lighting do you use when you shoot outside?
If I have a 90 centimeter softbox with an AD200, and I use a single light.
Single.
What I tend to do is to try and use as much natural light as I can. So I will push my ISO up and use my flash as a fill, really, just to compensate. I try and create. What I've always tried to do is to make, even when I'm shooting indoors, is I want to make it feel like it's outdoors. So you kind of want to have that softer light that you get when you're using natural light. And the picture of Solly that was there with the wagon wheel, or the small wheel, I can't call it wagon wheel because it's not, can I really? It's a bit, but with a small wheel, that was shot with quite a lot of natural light, but just that fill for the flash to give it that sharpness, and just to make sure that all the shadows were nicely lit as well.
Do you ever stack your AD200s up to just give you a little bit more oomph?
Just one.
One's enough.
Just one. And it's only recent. And I only just recently started using two, because whilst we were in the middle of a workshop, somebody knocked my one over and it came a cropper, and I thought it was dead. So I bought a new one. And the other, my main light was 200. My fill was just a Yongnuo 600 XT. But having lost this, well, I thought I'd lost the AD200. I bought a new one. I thought, oh, it's fine. It's done me a few years. It's, these things happen. Switched the new one on, put the trigger on, fired it, and the second one fired as well. And so it's working on the trigger. So I now will use two AD200s in the studio, but only one outside.
Yeah, they're superb value for the money, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Have we got anybody else that want to ask any questions? Because now's your chance. We've all sort of seen Caroline's work online and all been in awe of her work. So if you want to talk to Caroline, now's your chance, because you won't get a chance to talk to her anymore.
I'm not scary, honest. You can ask me.
We go up to her workshops. I'm sure Lisa would want to say something, because Lisa's been in awe of your work.
Yeah, the problem I got, I think my mic's playing up. I don't know if you can hear the background noise.
Yeah, we can hear you. You're fine.
I think sort of the amount of shots that you get through on like a shoot day, what sort of range have you got? Do you keep to a certain amount, or do you just keep taking and taking and taking?
Yeah, I just keep taking and taking, and I, not to the point that I'm taking things that I don't want to look at, but it's the same theory applies to doing the memory shoots for the dogs. Okay, so I've had two occasions where we've been out on more on a shoot day, and I've taken pictures of people, and I've taken pictures of the beaters and the pickers up and the guys that are, the keepers and the underkeepers, and then there's been a tragedy or somebody's been lost, and the pictures of somebody doing what they absolutely love to do in their absolute element are invaluable. And there have been times where somebody said to me, you couldn't just go back, could you, and see if you've got a picture of, and there has been that picture of. And that's another reason why I'm very bad at culling, because I think I've had so many instances in the past where I've gone back and found what people have asked me for, whereas if I'd maybe been a little sort of more strict with it, they would have gone in the bin. So if it's really out of focus or really poor or really awful, or it's one of a set of 10, then it goes and I don't keep it. But I will carry on shooting. I never limit myself. An average shoot day, God dear me, if I'm at work, properly at work, and I'm going to do it for a client and I'm covering 8 guns on a grouse moor for the day, I'll come away with probably 2,500 shots.
Oh, blimey.
But you've got to remember, if I'm shooting a dog running in, I'm running 10 frames a second, so how many dogs? And if I decide that I'm going to stand behind butt number 1 and shoot grouse in flight, that gets you 1,500 shots before you've even started, and so and people, it always makes me laugh, because people will say, oh, great, isn't it, disposable photography, digital? I say, yeah, your shutter's disposable as well, isn't it? It has got a life expectancy, so you still have to be careful, but no, it's I won't hold back. I'll keep going, and the
majority of them, you're down on the floor, down on the ground.
The dog shots always, yeah. In fact, even if I'm sitting behind a grouse butt, then I'm sat at the side of the butt and I'm down on the ground. When you're out on any kind of shoot day, what you don't want to do is the thing that makes the bird go woof, because else you don't go back again. They don't ask you back again. So if you suddenly poke your head up and all the birds that are coming in that they've spent the last 6 months getting to come towards them then go whoa at the last minute because you've waved your 70 to 200 in the air, you're not very, not in the good books. And I don't use anything more than a 70 to 200 when I'm out on a grouse moor. Sometimes I'll put a 1.4 converter on, but I don't like to lose the quality. I love how the 70 to 200 works with my 5D4 and my 5D3, and I just can't get around the.
Do you go for single point focus or
Single point focus? Yeah, one above center. Single point focus and high speed continuous, and off you go. AI servo, and that's your settings. Try and keep it above 1250 if you can, and try and keep your ISO down. It's all the simples. Try and keep your ISO down and follow that dog. If it's a dog that you're watching, let it run in a few strides before you put your camera up. Watch what it's doing. Don't just think, lift it up, point it at its face and go. See what it's doing. Learn to sort of feel that movement of the dog. And people was one of the things, if you come on a workshop with me, if I see you shoot that dog that runs all the way into me and stops, and then you pick your camera up and chimp, you'll be in trouble. What goes on afterwards when the dog reaches the handler is as important as what is coming in towards you. The shots I always want are the ones where my students have got me wrapped up in Solly, giving him a cuddle at the end of the day, or I've got my hand on his head. It's the interaction between the owner and the dog. And people stop. They get to the point where the dog is here for the retrieve, and then they pick the camera up and look at the back of it. Whereas in actual fact, you need to keep going. You need to turn around and follow that dog in and see what happens when it reaches its handler. See what happens when it reaches its owner. It could be that dog's first ever retrieve, and that owner's going to be so ecstatic, and it's going to be a moment to capture. And they're the stories you're looking for, and they're the stories that you want to tell. So yeah, shoot away.
Brilliant.
Yes,
Look forward to coming up.
yes, I'm always saying that. And I think Andy, it was a cut. Do you remember on the Shropshire falconry shoot? And a couple of the guys said when I was looking at my camera, they had a go at me because they said, "You're always telling people not to chimp on your screen and look." Because I think that comes from working with animals as well. Because you never want to miss a heartbeat, do you really? So
no, you don't. But the other thing, and we all do say stop chimping, but at the same point, there is no point in running 100 shots of one particular dog doing this, doing that, doing the other, and not having checked that it's right. We all have that moment where we've all done it, and there it is. There's the shot. We've seen the shot. The dog's coming towards us. We look, and it's completely overexposed. What am I doing? What's happened here? Oh, that was because a minute ago I was facing that way, and now I'm facing that way, and there's the sun. And so unless you stop occasionally and take a breath and check what's going on in the back of your camera, you'll end up with shots that are, I had a lady that came on a course, and we ran through 3 sets of retrieves. And she got to the last one and I said, "Has anybody checked?" And she said, "Oh, mine aren't in focus." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, because I've switched the manual button on the lens." So you've got to keep checking. You've got to be aware of what you're doing. You've got to be aware of what you're taking,
Yeah.
So you can chimp now and again. It's all right.
Yeah,
For your studio work, do you find there's a limit on the attention span of the dogs when they get to the point where they switch off?
Yeah, even outside, even if we split the session and we're doing a portrait and a studio and a sort of a out on the moor session, you absolutely do. Younger dogs, you've got a good 20 minutes and then they're gone. Older dogs, to be fair, I can shoot an hour with an older dog, but I break. I will make sure that we sit on the floor and we have a tickle, and they go out for a wee and they come back in again and they have another bit of whatever it is I've got in my pocket, and they'll have another sniff around, and then we'll start again. And between changing setups, I tend to let them go and have a minute. And if I ever see a dog flick its tongue or stress yawn, we stop. and we'll go and do something else. We'll go out and we'll play with the ball. I'll bring it back in 10 minutes later, and if it does it once more, we'll call the session. That's the end of it. You need to be aware, you know, some dogs, God, I have 2 dogs of mine that won't look at a camera. Absolutely not, under any circumstances. They completely, it's not even a we've grown up with a camera, it's stress. They close down completely, cannot do it, don't like the invasion of, you know, into their space. And you've got to think about it, you're pointing this great big huge white lens at them, and in the studio you're a lot closer. I still use my 70-200 in the studio, and you're a lot closer to them, and some dogs find it really intimidating. And I always say at the beginning of a session, if your dog doesn't like it, we'll stop. But don't worry, because we'll go outside and we'll do something else, and we'll still get some lovely shots of your dog. So you have to be able to think on your feet. It's like horses, you know. If a horse comes up and treads on your foot, you've got to think, right, what do I do now? Now I'm going to have to take different shots because I can't go tromping around after it. But you've always got to have an alternative. You can't just rely on the fact that the dog's going to walk into the studio and go, yeah, this is cool. You know, they're not all like my Flossie, who's the complete diva that just goes, whatever. And if you do get up, I'll bring her in, because her party trick is literally, she knows the drill, and you open the door and you sit in front of the hay bale, and she comes in and she says, you've got 3 shots and then you need to pay me. And you'll take 3 clicks of your shutter and she's at you asking for a treat. Thanks very much. You got to pay me now. So,
yeah, I've got 2 like that. One who loves it, one who hates it.
Yeah. And they generally, you know, you get a dog that genuinely really doesn't like to have it a camera pointed at them. And you know, my little Ronnie, she didn't even used to like having an iPhone pointed at her, nothing pointed at her, and she'd just turn her head away, and then she'd shrink. So you knew it wasn't just I'm being difficult. She just really didn't like it. So, and dogs are different. But you know, if it's something that any of you are planning on doing, or is there anybody here that's a dog photographer?
Sometimes.
I think we all do a little bit of it, yeah. So
yeah. And is there any of those dog photographers got a specific thing that they want to ask me that they struggle with? Because if this was me, I'd be sitting there going, oh, I don't want to ask anything now. I'll just sit here and be quiet. But if you've got something you want to ask me.
I've got one for you, Caroline.
Go on, then.
How'd you get more money out of your clients?
Change your client. Who's asking me?
I'm asked. It's Mike.
Mike, change your client. No, you got to get your clients right. You've got to get your clients right, haven't you? You have to decide what you want your client to be, and you have to decide whether or not you'll go to. I mean, it's a really valid question. I know we all laugh about it, but you've got to market yourself to the right client.
Because I found, I don't know if you found the same, but you know, like if you're doing families or you're doing children, you know, you can sell the package, and they will buy collections. When I've always dealt with dog owners, it generally tends to be they want one shot.
I was just going to say
it's going to be a war portrait, but they only want one shot.
Yeah, absolutely. From a gallery of 30 images from a session, you are going to have 3 that you need to smack them in the face with, because they will have 1 on the wall, then they'll have 2 small prints, and the rest they'll have in a book. So sell them a book. So you don't have to sell them a hugely expensive book. There are some really good, beautiful fine art paper quality books that aren't lay flat books, but that make a great addition to a shoot, to a main piece of wall art. But I do agree with you that they generally are looking for 1 picture of their dog on the wall.
Yeah.
If they've got 2 dogs, you're going to go for 2, but I guarantee there'll be 2 smaller ones rather than 1 big one.
Yeah.
So, I tend to do big wall art for dogs and horses.
Yeah.
And then I'll kind of sell them a big wall art piece, and then they'll have a couple of little ones to go with it, either to go on the side of it or on. Yeah, so I tend to do sort of either 1 big one or 3 with the dogs.
Yeah. So do you find it easier then, because you know that they're only going to go for this, like Sally and Caroline? Do you find that although they're only probably going to go for say 1 2024 and a few small ones which aren't going to be sort of worth talking about, do you find that it's much more sensible from a business point of view that you're charging for your time more because you know, say if you're going to take a morning to get one superb shot that they're going to have wall art with, if you're only charging them for a piece of wall art, it's not going to be as viable as it could have been. So therefore you think, well, okay, I'm going to charge my time on this as well to make it worthwhile.
I don't, I have to be honest. I have a fixed rate for my sessions, and I bank on the fact that they're going to have their piece of wall art, and that then they're going to have their little pieces, and they're going to have their book, and they're going to have some digitals, because that's what they're going to want. And by the time you've got there, they are spending the same as, you know, somebody that had come along with, I don't do families, but that had brought the kids and done a family, and you'd sold them a package to. You know, I'm looking to sell 30 by 20 pluses as a main piece of, I'm sure Sally is as well, as a main piece of wall art. The problems that you sometimes have is that people will come in and they'll look at a 30. So my sample, somebody once told me, always have the biggest sample that you can afford to have hanging on your wall, because they'll always have the one that's below that in size. And it's very, very true. It's very, very true. If they can, I find that if they can touch them, see them, feel them, visualize them, they can see it and hold it. It makes it much more real and much more tangible for them. But then I have had people that have gone home and go, oh, do you know, I wanted a 30 by 40, but I have not got the space for it. And they've been gutted that we have had to have a 20 by 24 because there isn't physically space. So you have to work around that as well. And I tell you what, there's a swing towards at the moment, and it, you know, everybody as a photographer has their own personal favorites for products. And what I didn't used to do was to do multi apertures. You can see it makes me feel funny. I liked to do one single big piece. That's what, but people really find value in having a multi aperture, you know. And so if you can sell that as 3 pieces instead of a smaller multi aperture, then try doing it that. I mean, I had a lady last year, and she came in and they did exactly that. They had a landscape in the middle, and then they had 2 portraits either side of it. And I thought, oh yeah, that'll look really nice. And then she said, we want them on acrylics. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. But you know, some people, I don't know how everybody works. My people always have the prices before they step in my studio. I don't want anyone to arrive here and get a shock, because I wouldn't want to do it either. I would never want to turn up anywhere, a car showroom, you know, to buy a new puppy, whatever. I wouldn't want to go anywhere and not know how much it was going to cost me. It's an investment. You know, I want to know that I can afford to have. I would think, oh, it would be awful if I walked in and I said, oh, I want one of those. And I turned around to you and said, yeah, that's 450 quid. And they went, oh God, I can't just not. You know, so just save everybody the embarrassment. And I know that there are people out there, you know, maybe not how I work, but I know there are people out there that will hard sell like that say, well, no, go on. And the problem is that people then go home and then they feel guilty about what they've spent, and they feel guilty about what's on their wall. And forever, that picture on the wall is going to be a bad experience. And I don't want that. I want people to go away thinking, I can't wait to get it on my wall. You know, that's what you want them to feel. So, you have to, and that goes back to your original question. You have to market to your client. You know, not everybody is your client.
I mean, I get a lot, Caroline. I don't know if you do, but I get a lot of customers that want montages if they've got more than one dog. And you know, I think they think that it's going to save money as well. And I have it with horses as well. And I can go on a shoot and photograph a client's horses. One of them, she had 4. And it's always difficult doing a montage with 4 animals, isn't it? Because you have a great big, like, you know, they want wall art and it's really long. I mean, 3 is nice, but I think they think, well, it's going to be a lot cheaper if I have a montage done. And I'm like, well, actually, it's going to be more expensive, but there's a lot more time and effort, you know. But
yeah, you'd be better off having 4 individual portraits hanging on the wall.
Definitely.
Yeah, you do. I suppose 2s and 3s. nice because you can make, for me it's different with horses, but for the dogs, so with the poodles I had 2 down on the floor and 1 in the chair, so you can make a triangle. And you can, I am very conscious of making things too long and thin, because then to be able to see them you've got to have them massive, and then you get into what Mike's talking about, you get into cost and you get into size and you get into all of that. So it's, but I think as photographers you do have an obligation to steer your client to what you think is the best way of displaying images. I mean, everybody has their, as I said, I put my hand up, I'm not one for multi-apertures. They have their place, they absolutely do, and there is a real market for them. They're really very, very popular at the moment. But I just like, if I'm going to look at an image, maybe it's because I like to look at everything here. I like things big. I like to see what I'm looking at. I don't want to have to look at one, then look at another. I'd rather have 3, as we've just said, 3 individual pictures. But everybody's different, I suppose. So you learn your client, don't you? That's what it's all about.
Just to finish off, because I've got a little bit over, I'm sorry to keep you for so long. You've been a real dole staying there as long as you have. Just the new people that are getting into sort of pet photography, what advice would you give them sort of starting out? What's the best advice you could give them?
What's the best advice I could give them? Don't give up. We always get to that point where we look at our, and you know what the best piece of advice is? Do not value your work, or do not compare your work to Mr. Next Door. Don't go on Facebook and do the, oh, but I'm never going to be as good as that, because you are different, you are unique, you are you. You're not that person. Your editing style will never be that person, because everybody's editing style has a bit of who they are in it. And there's nothing worse than looking at lots of courses. Sally's going to nod in a minute, I know. Lots of people go off and see different photographers, and then all we see is that style again and again and again and again and again. No, make it yours. Make you part of that image. You know, if you come to see me, I don't want you going away replicating my work. You can have my flossy on a bag, but you put your spin on it. You make it yours. You own that picture. You own what you've taken. Don't be one of 500 that are making flossy on the bag look like I do. So be individual, stay true to what you're doing, and always put your best bits of work on Facebook. You're only as good as the last picture that people see. Okay, because they won't remember the one last week that you posted that they all went, oh, they'll just remember the one that was out of focus that you went, oh, really? Did I put that up? So
that's very true. Well, that's absolutely.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Just a quick one before you go. Someone's asked about your Instagram and Facebook, where they can see your work.
Oh, Working Line Images. Facebook, I'm on Facebook as Working Line Images. Website is www.workinlineimages. And Instagram is @workingline.
We'll put those up on the group for people to check out, so they can follow you. And we will organise, once we get out of this COVID situation, we will organise a couple of groups to come up.
Hey, you can have a coach trip to Yorkshire.
Yeah, we'll do B&Bs and we will stay down there, and we will come down. Me and Lisa, I know Mike would love to come down.
Well, super easy.
Well, I look forward to meeting.
Yeah, we'll be.
I look forward to meeting some of you.
What a fun way to end this fantastic week off with our conversation. We've had such an amazing week this week. We've had 4 things go on, and this is the
icing on the cake.
Icing on the cake, most definitely. I was really looking forward to this, wasn't we, Lisa?
Oh yeah, been brilliant.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for asking me, and thank you very much for having me. And you're all more than welcome when you get a minute.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
If you've got any questions that you're all sitting there going, oh, I wish I'd asked that, you can find me on Facebook and ask me privately in a message. I won't be offended. It's okay. Or in the group. If you've got any questions, stick them in the group.
Lovely. Well, we're really
done. All right. Lovely to meet you all.
Brilliant. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much, darling. And we'll say goodbye to everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Night.
Good night. Good night. We had quite a few tonight, which was good.
You did. What a nice lady.
I've only just seen, I had my chat. I was just looking at the chat now because I missed that.
Yeah, you did well, darling. it's really nice to have you in the group. So I'm kind of hoping that we can go, you know, include you a bit more.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. It was fun to do. I was just looking at what people are. I should have this up my IPS. Who put that? Whoever put my IPS was £29. Are they still here?
Oh yes, I saw that actually when it come up. Yeah, amazing. But it was really lovely to see your journey right from the beginning. So I thought that was quite important to have, you know.
Everybody's got a journey, haven't they? And you have to come from somewhere, and there has to be something that keeps you going, and it's creating the memories behind everything, you know. And there are as I said, there are so many occasions where people have said to me, I wish. And I you know, I'm making my life's work to make sure that people get the shots before it's too late, because, you know, a dog in his prime is very different to a dog that's got a few weeks left. We lost Elvis a couple of weeks ago, and I'm so lucky that we've got some of the most amazing pictures of him, just because he's been one of the dogs that I photographed on my journey. So, and you kind of feel sorry for those people that say, oh, I was going to do it, but we didn't get time and now he's gone. And you think, oh, don't do it. Just get down and take your picture. But it's been lovely, and it's been good fun.
Yeah. You know, what I like about it is how the photography all pulls us together. I mean, you know, our photography pulled me and you together, Caroline, like quite a while ago.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because we talk to each other and it's like, you like my work and you like my work. So it's like, it's funny, isn't it? And we all pull together in different parts of the country. It's
a strange thing though, because having been very quite closely involved with the gun dog world and the trialing side of it, of the competition side of it as well, and it's a very closed shop. It's very cliquey, and they kind of don't talk to each other. And I'm not telling you how I do that. And when I first started in photography, there was a bit of that as well. And I found it very difficult to get anybody to answer anything about anything. You know, if you asked a question, it was like, I'm not telling you, you know, it's the biggest secret of the century. And 10 years on, we have situations like this, like we're sitting here now, all of us on Zoom, sharing our stories and our journeys and our adventures, and helping people to learn how to edit and all of those sorts of things. And we're doing it with a willingness that didn't used to be there. And I think still in some areas, people are very cagey and guarded about what the information that they'll give to you. But if I think as a photographer, you are secure and happy with where you are with your work, and you know that you have got your style. I mean, people talk about style, don't they? And I had a chat with somebody on Zoom this afternoon, and he said, oh, I've got to find my style. I said, no, you don't. I said, your style will evolve and it'll change. And I said, your style, it even starts at whether you like to hold your camera portrait or landscape. You know, that is part of your style. I know photographers, I can't remember the last time I ever saw them shoot in a portrait mode. It's all landscape, you know. And yeah, a dog lends itself to a landscape when it's coming into a retrieve, but you turn it around, you do it in a portrait mode, it's a completely different shot. So it's, you know, I could bang on about finding your style for hours, because I've got a thing on that. And I did it with a group of girls, and we sat there and we took all our images apart and put them all back together again. And it was interesting that, you know, everybody's style does evolve. It isn't a thing that you can go out and find, even though some people will tell you that you can, I think. So, but it's the freedom to share now that's so nice, that didn't used to be there.
Exactly. And this is what I bang on about all the time, because I had the same as you when I started out. Everybody was very cagey, it was very male orientated. A lot of the guys really shut down, wouldn't talk to you about anything, or if they did, they wanted to charge you a fortune. And I'm like, you know, I'm actually trying my best to actually break down those barriers, bring people together, bring us all as a group, as a whole, and share. And like you said, because we're all different, we've all got our own styles, we can shoot the same thing, and every image that comes out from everybody else is completely different to everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that, yeah, definitely. But it's been amazing having you here. And
well, thank you.
I'm actually looking at you face to face rather than on the internet talking.
I know. It's nice though, isn't it? It is nice. Right, I shall leave you to your Thursday evenings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Um,
Good night.
Bye.
Night.
Bye then.